Greetings. Welcome to BankBeat Conversations with Tom Bengtson. And I am privileged today to be joined by Jackie Hilgert, the former Editor-in-Chief of BankBeat magazine. Hello, Jackie.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Great. And I'm so glad you're here. During your many years at NFR Communications and BankBeat magazine, you were involved in a lot of the hiring decisions that we made over the years. And of course, hiring, acquiring talent, these are very important and sometimes challenging issues in the banking industry as well as the business world in general. But we thought we'd take a little bit of time to talk specifically about some of those issues. Jackie, we worked together for over 20 years. What were some of the changes that you saw during that time in terms of hiring and what employees were looking for in a job?
First of all, thanks for having me, Tom. It's nice to be back. Hiring is always a challenge, and what I found worked well was casting as broad a net as you possibly can. So that means talking to your current employees about their networks and inviting them to invite their friends and just acquaintances, maybe former classmates, to consider the company. And but then also going to like the Indeeds or the Glassdoors, which casts a very broad net, but that is one of the ways that you can maybe scoop up a little bit more diversity in your hiring pool, which I found very beneficial for our company. And lastly, I think it's about making your company or your bank as competitive in the marketplace as it can be. And that means staying up to date on the trends in hiring and the trends in benefits, flexibility, things like that.
Yeah, and of course, one of the things that has emerged in the last, let's say since the pandemic, but the last few years, is the sort of the hybrid option or the various work options in terms of where you actually do your work. It used to be assumed that you would come into the office, but today there are a lot more approaches. And of course, even in our own company, we kind of have a work from where you want policy that applies to Mondays and Fridays, and some employees take advantage of that and some don't. Or let's say some want to work in the office on Mondays and Fridays. What do you think about that? When you were experiencing that, did you find that affected the team cohesion or productivity or anything like that?
Right. Well, there is no hotter topic today than work from home, especially with companies, including Zoom, just yesterday announcing that its employees needed to come back at least 3 days a week. It is truly more challenging as a manager to manage a remote workforce. And I think that's why you see larger companies pushing back on remote work, because it's just harder. And we've done it. We both have done it. It's difficult to bring people together and kind of ideate or just talk about the issues that are top of mind, or the issues that the company is facing when people are on screen. You miss a lot when you don't have that interpersonal connection.
It does seem like you need to be more organized if you're going to try to do more things via Zoom or Teams. Mm-hmm. You got to know if you've got a few things you want to say, you should have that planned out ahead of time and plan for that, as opposed to if you're just in the office all day, you're going to run into people, interact with them, and so if you happen to miss something in a formal meeting, there's still a good chance to connect with them in the break room or some other time.
Right, and there's a multitude of issues. I mean, if you're onboarding, it's very difficult to onboard a new employee and make them feel like they're part of a team when they are remote. That said, you have access to greater talent pool when you go outside of your marketplace. And so you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons on hiring remote. I know, though, that as a former contractor who did a lot of work for clients at home, on a home office, it's not about efficiency of the work. If you know what the work is, you can get the work done probably in less time when you're uninterrupted in a home office. But there's just a lot of things to weigh. So I can see the employee side, I can see the employer side. it's not going to be an issue that is resolved anytime soon.
Yeah, it certainly adds to the just the dynamic of being in the workplace today, and everybody's got to get along one way or the other, whether people are working remotely or whether they're all in the same place.
Right.
And I do think for banks, it's kind of interesting. There are more banks today that are hiring remote employees, if not 100% of the time, a large percentage of the time, and it does expand the talent pool. You know, if you're in a remote area or if you're in a small town, the talent pool might be limited, but now all of a sudden, if you've got jobs that can be done from anywhere, now all of a sudden you can recruit across the country or in any major metro area.
Right, and that it kind of lends itself to IT jobs, compliance jobs. On the flip side, you know, your loan officers, they need to be part of the community. And so they need to live where they work, and it doesn't mean they'll be in the office every day. Really, you don't want them in the office. You want them out visiting clients, prospecting, working in the community, just kind of being active in order to generate business. So it just really depends on the role in the bank.
Yeah, and I heard a very interesting comment from some bankers I was with recently. We were talking about employment issues and the difficulty of finding people who have the training or the background to do the specific job that you might have in mind. And somebody piped up and they said, you know, we really try to hire the heart and train the brain. I thought that was kind of interesting. The idea being that if you've got the person with the right maybe drive or character or temperament, that almost any job can be trained, you know, by knowledge and training.
I actually love that. Hire the heart,
train the brain.
Train the brain.
Yeah.
I know from my extended family, I have very talented people who are looking for work and applying across the board. And, you know, my daughter-in-law, for instance, she's like, I know I can do this job, but maybe I don't have the right qualifications that are listed, but I know I can do it. Just train me and I'll be great. And I know that in banking, you know, over the years of covering different banks, they're looking for the people that have the right people skills, and the technical side can be taught.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And historically, I've wrestled with that as an employer. Do we want to write a very specific job description and then stick to that no matter what? And I think during some periods of our company we have done that, and other periods of our company we have not. And generally, I think with more, let's say, less experienced employees, you find that there's a high degree of flexibility, and they can plug into almost any reasonable role. And I do like what I'm hearing more about companies where young employees are drawn to a mission or, let's say, a philosophy of a company almost more than the specific job that they're doing. And I think for banking that's really cool. So it's not so much about lending money as it is about helping somebody build something great that will make the community better, or, you know, whether that's a company or whether that's it could be a service of some kind, but the idea of building something and helping people do that.
Right,
Cool.
I've seen that as a trend developing over time as well. People want to be part of something larger than themselves, part of a movement, part of the community. Community bank is great for that because you can show prospective employees how you're impacting the community through giving and other ways. I would caution bankers, though, to make sure you're walking the walk, not just talking the talk. You know, you can say everybody is part of the movement, the community banking movement, but yes, they really need to demonstrate how, and that needs to be sustainable over time.
I heard a really interesting comment, or maybe you call it an observation, from a bank that is really trying to enhance its sense of mission and then hire people who buy into that mission. And the comment is that younger, new employees love the idea of the mission and they grasp that. But his experience is that only lasted about 6 months, 6-8 months into it. Then it was like the employee had less drive around the mission and then started to focus more on things like salary, advancement, benefits, and so forth. And he was a little frustrated by that. And I didn't know if that's consistent with your experience or what you make of that.
Well, that's really interesting. My experience is that people do want to be part of a mission or something larger than themselves, but they also want work-life balance. And part of the drive for benefits and salary is to achieve work-life balance. Unlike our generation, where work was kind of like everything that we focused on, the younger generation is, they want to travel, they want flexibility, they want to be able to bring their dogs into work if they can. I know
That's a tough one.
You're not a huge fan of that.
Yeah, we've had a few dogs running around here sometimes. It's never been my favorite thing, I have to say.
But it's about bringing your whole self to work, and today's employers have to recognize that when you're not just bringing in an automaton to fill a role, you're bringing in a human being who has all kinds of things going on in their life. They've got extended family, they have needs, they have challenges, and you have to rise to meet those in order for that employee to stick around and give their all.
I heard one bank that was actually willing to give an employee a treadmill at their desk. They asked for that, and I thought the stand-up desk was a big deal, but here we're taking that a step farther. But it is kind of cool to see companies, banks specifically, go the extra mile, be creative, think outside the box in terms of doing things that make the work experience a little bit more rewarding. There is one benefit that gets talked about, it's gotten a lot of traction lately, and that's this earned wage access. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but
am.
Yeah. So people typically get paid every 2 weeks or once a month or something like that, but the earned wage access just says, basically at the end of every day, if you've earned the money, you have access to it. So if you've only worked 2 days, you can get 2 days worth of wages right away. And there are companies, third-party providers that make this happen. But I would think for banks, obviously if you're running payroll accounts through your own bank, you might even be able to set it up without a vendor involved. But for somebody of my generation, it seems like why would you want that? But yet we know people do. I mean, the surveys show that a lot of people want that. What do you think of that?
Well, it reminds me of the kind of the gig economy. It's kind of an offshoot of that. I'm with you on, I'm used to getting my money at a certain date, or twice a month or once a month. What it tells me, though, is that this is an employee who's ripe for some counseling on their finances, personal finances, some budgeting tips. I know that today's young people are coming out of school with very little financial literacy, and helping an employee understand and utilize their income the best way possible is just another benefit that they could gain from working at a bank.
Yeah, that is true. I know that almost nobody balances their checkbook anymore, but it's kind of a good exercise to at least know how to do, right? I mean,
I'll admit that I don't anymore.
Yeah, and I know most people don't. And I'm not saying I do it regularly either, but if I had to, I think I would know how to do it. And do you include the checks that haven't cleared? Well, the answer is yes. And,
you still write checks?
Well, that's true too. Yes, I still write checks, so that's what makes me a real dinosaur. Anyway, well, this has really been a nice conversation, and I appreciate you joining me for this. And it's really fun to get together and exchange some ideas like this. So thank you so much for being a part of this. This has been BankBeat Conversations with Tom Bengtson. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll look for you next time.